Next to them, we're talking to those heroes who made that unbelievable rescue. But first, the media now doing some major soul searching over the coverage of the infamous Steele Dossier, the 2016 Democratic Party-funded research into possible links between then-candidate Donald Trump and the Russian government. Tonight, we go behind the headlines and present a nonpartisan, fact-based analysis of what we now know. Earlier this month, Igor Danchenko, considered a primary researcher for the report, was charged with lying to the FBI about his sources. The charges stem from an investigation by Trump-appointed special counsel John Durham, who continues to investigate the origins of the Russia investigation. Not long after Danchenko was indicted, the Washington Post began correcting over a dozen articles related to Steele Dossier coverage, removing large portions of at least 2 stories. The dossier, which was really a series of intelligence assessments, was compiled by former British intelligence agent Christopher Steele. It was filled with salacious allegations ranging from claims that the Trump campaign had used moles in the Democratic National Committee, Michael Cohen had traveled to Prague to advance a collusion scheme, to the existence of a lewd video of Donald Trump and sex workers in a Moscow hotel room. The dossier and its scandalous allegations loomed large in media coverage throughout the Trump era. CNN and MSNBC in particular were seemingly chomping at the bit to cover everything and anything in it. Newspaper conglomerate McClatchy even reported that the Mueller report confirmed claims made in the Steele dossier. That turned out not to be true. On the other side of the political spectrum, Fox and other right-leaning outlets used the dossier's inaccuracies and ties to the Clinton campaign to try to discredit the entirety of the Russia investigation, which was not launched as a result of the dossier. It was, however, used to get a renewal of an existing FISA warrant on Trump ally Carter Page. The dossier appears to have relied heavily on information supplied by Danchenko, a Russian citizen living in D.C., not necessarily a source with deep ties to the Kremlin. Danchenko told the FBI that his sources included a drinking buddy, a friend from middle school living in Cyprus, and an anonymous caller. Danchenko also told investigators he rarely kept notes of his conversations. He now faces those criminal charges for lying to investigators about whether he'd used longtime Clinton and Democratic Party supporter Charles Dolan Jr. as one of his sources. Now, while there were clear issues with the Steele dossier, multiple investigations, including the inquiry by special counsel Robert Mueller, did verify a key finding from the dossier, that the Russians were trying to interfere in the 2016 campaign to help Donald Trump. And the Mueller report found that the Trump campaign welcomed that apparent help. There were conversations between Russians and members of the Trump campaign, but no one has found evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government, as alleged in the dossier. And a December 2019 report from DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz found that the FBI's investigation, quote, raised doubts about how reliable Steele's claims rightly so. Nearly 5 years after BuzzFeed published Steele's full report, much of the most high-profile and salacious claims from the dossier are either unproven or discredited. There's no evidence of Trump spies in the DNC. The FBI concluded that the allegation the Trump campaign and Michael Cohen colluding with Kremlin-backed hackers was not true. And there's been absolutely no evidence that points to the existence of the hotel room video of Trump. The Horowitz report also found that Steele may have been given Russian disinformation himself, as certain allegations made in the dossier, quote, were inaccurate or inconsistent with what FBI investigators found. And in recent interviews, Steele has stuck to his guns about the veracity of the report.
I stand by the work we did, the sources that we had, and the professionalism which we applied to it.
So, how wrong did the media get it? Joining us now is Glenn Kessler, editor and chief writer of The Fact Checker for The Washington Post. His piece, The Steele Dossier, A Guide to the Latest Allegations, breaks down the allegations against Danchenko and what it means for the Steele Dossier. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so, you know, in terms of assessing, first of all, overall, the Steele Dossier, now multiple investigations, numerous people have gone through this. They've been highlighting the inaccuracies. On the sort of, in the totality of it, how would you describe its level of accuracy?
I would call it low level of accuracy. You could say that maybe the possibility of Russian involvement in the election was, highlighted in the report, but all you needed to do was read newspaper accounts. I mean, the Washington Post reported before the first memo was written by Steele that the DNC was hacked and there seemed to be some Russian involvement. So that was no great secret.
So what do you make of the Washington Post, your paper, now going through and sort of excising large portions of its reporting related to the dossier?
Well, this reflects information was contained in two articles, and that had to do with the possibility of one of these sources that were supposedly named by Danchenko. The Post has explained the reasons for doing that, and it's I think it stands for itself why we did that.
Yeah, and talk to us about Danchenko. I mean, what is his significance? How important was he in creating what became this series of reports known as the dossier?
Well, he was described as the primary subsource. So what happened was Steele was hired by this company, Fusion GPS, which had been hired by the Clinton campaign, via a law firm, to investigate Trump's links to the Russians. Steele then turned around and hired Danchenko to do the primary research. So a lot of what appears in those reports is information that Danchenko supposedly collected from his sources. But if you read what Danchenko said he gave to Steele and then how it appeared in the dossier, Danchenko told the FBI he didn't recognize some of it. It seemed totally hyped. The whole incident in the hotel room, Danchenko told Steele, I can't confirm this. I heard it. I can't confirm it. And then in the dossier, it says this was confirmed.
Right.
So it's a bit of, it's a bit of like if you play a game of telephone, right? As this story gets further from the original way it was told.
So what do you make, though, now looking back at the media coverage, right? How bad was it? And what I mean by that is, this was a document that was actively used by the FBI to get this renewal of a FISA authorization. So It's not as if the media made up this document, but it was certainly covered a lot, used a lot, cited a lot by the media. How bad a job do you think that the media did as the fact checker for the Washington Post? How bad a job on the whole do you think that the media did in using the Steele dossier the way that it did?
Well, I would just say you can't use a broad brush term of media. There were certainly a number of cable hosts that feasted on the dossier. But you also had newspapers like the Washington Post that, treated it pretty gingerly. We did not print the entire document. The stories for which we got that we've just recently altered, that was an effort to identify the sources, and we were told one of these people was a source, which is how it was presented in the dossier. And you have to remember also the FBI at the time was vouching for Christopher Steele. They were saying he was this highly regarded source who had, given us tremendous help on the FIFA investigation. Now, the Inspector General's report says actually he didn't really provide a lot of help on the FIFA investigation. A lot of what he provided wasn't necessarily confirmed. So it was like the gossip within the FBI was incorrect.
Right.
And one of the things I write is, you're only as good as your sources in journalism. Turns out that Danchenko's sources were not particularly good. And, we were relying in the media on FBI officials who were vouching for Steele, who were using the dossier in order to get a FISA application. Generally, you trust, law enforcement officials. Now, it's, should there have been as much credence placed in the fact that the FBI thought this was serious? Well, that's a good question. That's a very good one.
So, one of the things I think which is the most underreported element of this is the Senate bipartisan report that actually looked at the Russia investigation. And it seems no one talks about that. We talk about Horowitz. We talk about other people investigating the Steele dossier. It would seem the one place we should all look is the bipartisan Senate report. How much of that report supports or undermines anything in the Steele dossier?
Well, that report, and I think part of the reason why it got missed, it came out very late because they spent a lot of time on it and they worked very hard to be bipartisan about it, to the credit of that committee. This was the Senate Intelligence Committee. So, and as it often is in media circles, you look for conflict. And in this case, you had a group of Republicans and Democrats coming together and saying, yes, we have confirmed that Russia tried to intervene in the election, in order to help Donald Trump. And that should be embraced. Well, that's a bottom line finding that everyone, should be able to agree on. But, by that point, in part because of the dossier coloring people's views of this, it had become a partisan point. And, the President Trump never accepted it, and he called it a hoax, and a lot of his supporters then wouldn't accept the judgment of a bipartisan finding.
Right. And I guess the reason I brought that up is because I think you can both believe that the Russians tried to impact the 2016 election in favor of Donald Trump and believe that the vast majority of what was in the Steele dossier was garbage. And, those two things can go together if you're not viewing this through a partisan lens. Glenn Kessler, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
An election rigged. The amazing story behind the election fraud for a United States House seat. Coming up. Election fraud is real. No, not in any significant way in the 2020 presidential election, but there have indeed been serious cases around the country, and there are still major vulnerabilities as we head into the 2022 midterms. A new book goes inside one wild scam to rig a 2018 congressional race in North Carolina and shines a light on some of the stunning flaws in the local election system, flaws that could be present nationwide. The book details how a campaign operative hired people to go door to door in the rural 9th District of North Carolina and gather absentee ballots. The operative, McCrae Dowless, had workers fill in the ballots, forge witness signatures, and even mail them from post offices near the addresses of the voters so as not to arouse suspicion. The tainted ballots gave Republican candidate Mark Harris a 905-vote victory over Democratic incumbent Dan McCready in a race where more than 250,000 votes were cast. But the State Board of Elections was wise to the scam, as the campaign operative McCrae Dowless had been suspected of other voter fraud schemes in previous races. They conducted an investigation and eventually threw out the results, ordered a revote, which McCready then won. So why is this so important now? Because these types of vulnerabilities exist in many jurisdictions across the country. And while the former president and his allies continue to dwell on issues related to voter integrity, which are either extremely minor or completely non-existent, there are very real issues with the election system in America. And if these issues aren't addressed, they could very easily pop up again in 2022 and beyond. Just because the 2020 presidential election wasn't rife with fraud doesn't mean voter fraud isn't real. Joining us now, Michael Graff and Nick Oxner. They are the co-authors of The Vote Collectors: The True Story of the Scamsters, Politicians, and Preachers Behind the Nation's Greatest Election Fraud. Michael and Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, let me start with you, Michael. Give us a brief summary of what happened here, how this operative was able to do this and rig these votes.
Well, our book mostly looks at just McCrae Dowless is the central figure in this, but our book really looks at the ocean, I guess, not just one sick fish. We try to show how somebody like McCrae Dowless and his scheme could come to be at all. And a lot of it has to do with, his operation was designed to, essentially, what is legal is that he was he was sending people out to help ensure that folks were requesting absentee ballots in this wide sweeping county called Bladen County, which is about 880 square miles and only has about 35,000 people in it. So, you know, everybody lives pretty far from polling places. Absentee ballots are a big part of how they vote there. And so McCrae Dallas would send his workers out for about $10 to $12 a pop to go door to door and make sure that people requested absentee ballots. When the ballots came back, when the state board of election or when the board of elections would send the ballots back to those people, that's what the question that drives our book is. Like, the part that's illegal in North Carolina is you can't collect absentee ballots. Did his workers actually collect the ballots from them? And that's sort of the line that his operation always towed. And there were always questions about it, about whether he was doing it and his competitors were doing it in this space.
So Nick, is the conclusion that we should take away from the research that you all have done in this book that absentee ballots are a problem?
No, the conclusion isn't that absentee ballots themselves are a problem. In Bladen County, like Michael just said, it actually helps a lot of people vote, and they can be secure. The conclusion and the real takeaway from the book is that we need our systems to work. The systems that were supposed to be policing people like McCrae Dallas or on the other side, the Bladen County Improvement Association. There was evidence, concrete evidence for years leading up to the 2018 election that there were possible illegal activity surrounding absentee ballots. The State Board of Elections sent a 300-plus page document to the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of North Carolina in early 2017 that sat unread and unacted on before the 2018 election that could have prevented what happened in 2018. So the real takeaway is that we need the system to work. We need people to do their jobs in order to help make sure people are operating within the lines.
Well, but you say do their jobs, and, you know, that sounds like, and I know this is a very, you know, effort to be apolitical in your book here about this, but it does sound like what you're saying is that in part we need to have a tougher system in place when it comes to how absentee ballots function in this country, no?
Well, look, the fact of the matter is Robert Higdon, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of North Carolina, could have picked up and thumbed through the 300 pages and could have found the evidence, like the guy who was working for McCrae Dallas, who texted a buddy of his in whose name he had requested a ballot and said, "Yo, do you care who you vote for?" Well, that's illegal. You know that's illegal. I know that's illegal. That can't happen. And that was sitting on the desk of the U.S. Attorney from having happened in the 2016 election. So we need guys like the U.S. Attorney, or we need guys like the local prosecutor to actually read through those documents and say, hey, maybe there was a crime committed here. And that didn't happen.
So, Michael, how concerned do we need to be about 2022? I mean, if this could happen the way that you guys lay it out and people were not focusing on the real possibility of fraud for a long time, should we be concerned about 2022?
I think in any case where you have desperation, like the big thing in Bladen County is it's a desperate place. The median household income hasn't increased in 10 years. Folks are leaving all the time. I mean, but what is increasing, right? Like, political money to political campaigns is increasing. So as political campaigns get richer, and as places like Bladen County, and there are a lot of Bladen counties in this country, keep falling sort of farther and farther behind, I think the recipe is right for, if we did the math in our book, the two campaigns, the congressional race, they raised about $10 million. That would have funded thousands of jobs in Bladen County, at the median household, at the average income. Right. So you're talking like just, we can talk about the election system. And I think the important thing I think we've come away with in this book is like, we should focus on, we do have issues with our election system. We should focus on the real ones and not necessarily, we don't need to create false ones because we actually should focus on the real ones. We don't need to make stuff up.
Right. And so, again, the point is, I guess that the point I'm trying to make is that there are real issues of voter fraud. There can be real issues of voter fraud, but let's focus on the real ones and the real concerns and the real things we can do and not invent ones. Before I go, I got to ask both of you, whose dog did we just see in the
that
shot.
was my
Very
dog right
cute.
at my house. That was, his name is Murrow because his owners
Murrow.
are two TV reporters. So.
Oh, very nice. Well, tell Murrow we said, is Murrow sitting right there?
He's under, now he's laying down.
All right. Give Murrow our regards. Good night and good luck. Was it good night and good luck? Anyway, all right, Michael Graff and Nick Oxner, thank you so much. The book is called The Vote Collectors. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks a lot.
Coming up, TikTok. It's not just for kids and millennials anymore. Cable news hosts are getting in on the action. Maybe it's telling us more than we really want to know about it. It's coming up next. Time for our Mediaite Moments, where we check in on the day's bias, buzz, and the bull in the world of cable news and beyond. Cable news shows are desperately trying to attract a younger audience, and the younger audiences are apparently on TikTok. So that's where many of them are going to try to get a following. For example, MSNBC's Joy Reid, very active there, making waves with controversial hot takes like this about the testimony of Kyle Rittenhouse.
And it turns out that, white tears are not only, powerful for white women, when we call that Karening, but when white men do it too. I guess we can call it Kavanaughing, right? And those tears tend to be pretty powerful because other white people, and in this case, maybe people in the jury, are going to relate to them and say, oh, I see that as my dad, my son, somebody I can relate to. Whereas that kind of grace and that kind of sympathy doesn't really accrue often to people of color.
Could she actually say that on MSNBC or only on TikTok? Maybe she could say it on MSNBC. But it got us thinking about what cable news networks are doing on TikTok. CNN's TikTok presence takes more of a documentary approach. Whether it's crabs migrating, toxic foam in an Indian river, or a destruction of nuclear plants, they subtly make some of their political views clear with beautiful pictures. That only had 2,000 views. We looked for Fox News on TikTok. We didn't find much. We did, however, find MSNBC on TikTok talking about Fox News.
Do you think that Fox News in prime time is good for the country or bad?
Listen, there are shows that I like in Fox News, and there's shows that I don't like.
Oh, look at us showing how tough we are with the questions. As for cable news talent, CNN's Jake Tapper uses TikTok to connect with his besties behind the scenes.
Hey, besties, it's Jake Tapper, your friendly neighborhood anchorman here. Hey, besties, I'm here on the election set. Hey, besties, it's Jake Tapper, your friendly neighborhood anchorman.
And, of course, there is my friend MSNBC's resident rap expert, Ari Melber, who really wants to remind his viewers that he's into hip-hop and youth culture.
I post a TikTok. I don't do the dances, but I just got to talk to J Balvin about what he thinks of a lot of the TikTok dances to his music. Here's what he said.
Yeah, it's crazy how, TikTok helps elevate songs too.
A TikTok video about TikTok videos, such a perfect metaphor for our current state of the media. That is our wrap-up of the day's media bias and bull. Coming up, Chris Christie has got some advice for President Joe Biden. Part 2 of my interview with Chris Christie is coming up next. We're back. Earlier this week, I spoke with former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie about the state of the Republican Party and challenged him on some media issues as well. In his new book, Republican Rescue, the former governor blasted Donald Trump's continued rhetoric about the 2020 election being stolen. So I wanted to know, is he saying that the former president is dangerous? Here now is part 2 of our conversation. Now, you've criticized the president. We talked about this about January 6th a lot. I think the more important question, and following your advice, is moving forward, right? Is not as much looking back, but it's about moving forward. But there is a concern because former President Trump still won't accept the 2020 results, that moving forward, if he does run in 2024 against you, against whoever it is, that the same thing is going to happen again. And that, again, if he were to lose, that he wouldn't accept the results. Are you afraid of that?
Well, sure. I'd be afraid of any of those things that continue to undercut our democracy. But it would be a much different quality if a challenger refuses to accept the results. It would not be good. But he's not going to be sitting in the White House and have the levers of power of government at his fingertips. And so I do think that the nature of the threat that you hypothesize about, Dan, is significantly different and lesser than it was when Donald Trump was actually in the White House doing that. And that's why, as you know, on election night in ABC, I was very strong about his speech at 2:30 a.m. after the election, where he said the election was stolen right from the White House and had no evidence to prove it. I said it was wrong that night. And I've continued to say it was wrong consistently since then. And in terms of the future, I think it's less of a threat than it would be otherwise. But if your question is, does it give me concern? Of course it does, because I think anything that undercuts the integrity and the believability of our democracy is not good for the country.
You know, as I was reading your book, I was asking myself the following question that I'm going to ask to you, which is, as I went through it, I thought to myself, does Chris Christie think that Donald Trump is dangerous? Do you?
Look, I don't think he himself is dangerous, but I think that the rhetoric he used on election night and in the months thereafter, and has continued to use, is bad for our democracy. And it undercuts people's confidence in our elections. And that is not what you want in a democracy, and it's certainly not what you want from a president. And I've made that clear. I think it's a big, big fault of his. But I also am not one of those people who thought that on January 6th, that it proved the fragility of our democracy. On the other hand, I thought it proved the strength of our democracy, because those men and women who had been threatened by violence got back on the floor of the House and Senate by 4 a.m. the next morning and voted to certify that election, including Mike Pence. And certainly there was no guarantee that there wouldn't be more violence against those who voted that way going forward. And I think it shows how resilient and strong our democracy is. That those people didn't run away, stay in safe houses, wait till the coast was clear. They went back that night and did their job. That shows how strong the American democracy is.
How do you or anyone else run, and I know you haven't specifically announced you're going to run, that you're considering it, et cetera. How do you or anyone else run as a Republican in 2024 if Donald Trump is running and you know that anyone who runs against him will be viewed by him and his supporters as a traitor, not just as a competitor, not just as someone else running, but literally as a traitor to the party? How does the Republican Party, how do you or other candidates overcome that?
If you're running against him, why would you care what he thinks? I mean, I just wouldn't care. I mean, he could call me whatever name he wants, and I wouldn't care. It would be my job to go out to make the case to the voters, as it would be for any candidate who would try to do that, that their ideas, their approach, their personality is the best suited one to win the White House back for the Republican Party. And so if you're going to be scared or concerned about what Donald Trump or anybody else might call you during the race, you're probably not fit to be president anyway, because there's going to be a lot of scary things that are going to happen when you're president. You better be ready to stiffen your spine and make the decisions, smart, common sense decisions that are in the best interest of the people of this country. And if you're unable to do that in a campaign, you're sure as heck not going to be able to do it when you're the president.
If you were president, anyone come to mind for the Supreme Court names?
Besides Dan Abrams?
Besides Dan Abrams, right. Has to be the second,
or
has to be your second or third choices, unfortunately.
President company excluded. Look, I know a lot of great lawyers and a lot of great judges on the circuit courts of appeals around the country. I wouldn't want to jinx any of them by giving their names.
All right.
But I would tell you, what I think you would look for is the guy that I like on the court the most, who I know and like the most, is Sam Alito. And I think I'd be looking for the next Sam Alito if I were to become the president.
Last question, and this is probably going to be your least favorite question, which is, if President Biden asked for your advice on how to get up his sagging poll numbers, what would you say?
I'd say start governing like you campaigned. You campaigned to be a uniter and a moderator and a centrist, and you are governing to the left of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We didn't want Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren to be president. And now you've given us a Sanders-Warren administration. And the reason, Mr. President, I would say to him, that your poll numbers are sagging so badly is because the American people feel like they were lied to, that there was not truth in advertising during your campaign. And whenever a politician, you know this, Dan, whenever a politician governs contrary to the brand he campaigned on or she campaigned on, they're going to wind up being smelled out by the public. And especially those suburban independents that we talked about before, who switched from Donald Trump in 2016 to Joe Biden in 2020 because of that message, I definitely think are feeling a little bit duped.
Maybe that wasn't your least favorite question. Maybe that was the setup question that you were looking for, that final punch to stick. Chris Christie, the book is called Republican Rescue. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Dan, thanks so much for having me. Good luck with the program. I know it's going to be a good one because you're sitting in the big chair.
Coming up, have you seen Abdul? The 11-year-old has been missing for almost 4 years. Police believe he was kidnapped by his mom. How you can help find him, coming up next. Each Friday here on the show, we ask for your help to find a missing child. This week, we focus on Abdul Aziz Khan, an 11-year-old from Atlanta, Georgia. His family refers to him as Aziz. He's been missing since November 27, 2017. He was 7 at the time. Now get this. According to police, Aziz's mom and her husband took off with him. This during a custody battle with Aziz's father. A felony warrant for kidnapping was issued for Abdul's mom, Rabia Khalid, on January 2nd, 2020. The U.S. Marshals are involved in the search. We also have an age progression photo released by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. This photo is what they believe Aziz would likely look like today. Joining me now to discuss the investigation, Angeline Hartman. She's the media director for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Angeline, thanks for coming back. We appreciate it. So
hi, Dan.
This is all over a custody battle. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Dan, let's go back to 2014. So they're married, they're separated in 2014, and Aziz is about 3 years old at that time. And Dad tells me that everything was fine. It's amicable. They have shared custody. Eventually, Mom, who's an epidemiologist, she's got her master's in public health, she moves to Atlanta, Georgia. And Dad says, okay, you can take Aziz with you. They've got shared custody. He sees Aziz every other weekend. Dad's also a physician, and so he makes it all work. And at some point, she apparently starts limiting those weekend visits. And so Dad says, we go back to court. Along the way, it becomes a bitter custody battle. I mean, it's complicated, Dan. There are allegations made. There's an investigation. This takes time. And Dad is not allowed to see Aziz for about 18 months. Now, as this investigation is going on, these allegations turn out to be unfounded. And the court-appointed psychologists actually decide that it's Mom who is a danger to Aziz and that Dad should have primary custody. So now it's November 2017, and they're going back to court for the final ruling. Apparently, Mom learned what was going to happen. She doesn't show up for court. And so, yeah, so they give her the benefit of the doubt. One thing leads to another. And when they finally check into it, Mom's gone. Her husband, her new husband, is gone too. And Aziz, of course, is gone. And it turns out they sold the two cars, you know, a week before, and Aziz hasn't been seen a week before the court date. That was November 2017, Dan.
The pictures we're seeing of Aziz with a man is Dad, correct?
That's Dad, yes.
Okay,
now,
got it.
The U.S. Marshals would love for us to show a picture of Mom's new husband. But as you know, that can be sticky legally, so because he's not charged with anything. Let's be clear. Mom is charged with felony kidnapping out of Louisiana. She also faces a state charge out of Georgia for interference with child custody. And so we're good showing you her pictures. But U.S. Marshals say this: listen, mom's missing, new husband's missing, you know, the Aziz is missing. You read between the lines there.
Yeah.
Right. And they believe that, you know, they're getting help. You know, we're not talking about a couple who's, you know, in the backwoods eating berries, you know, on the side of a mountain or something.
So the point is that this is a solvable one. This is one where people actually may be able to help because of that. I got to run, but we've been showing the pictures. Angeline, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Solvable. This is definitely solvable, Dan, because there's been no media attention, and the U.S. Marshals believe that this show is going to turn things around, getting this picture out there along with the age progression, because that's what people should be looking for right now.
And Angeline, let's make sure we get this out on social as well. If you know anything about Abdul Aziz Khan's whereabouts, please call 1-800-THE-LOST. That is 1-800-843-5678. We usually show you police body cam each night, but tonight we have a slightly different type of video that we want to show you. And we'll be hearing from hero firefighters in just a moment. The volunteer Susquehanna Hose Company in Maryland was filming dive team recruitment videos with a full camera crew over the weekend. They were heading back out onto the water when the training exercise became real.
Okay, let's go. Get in the boat, John. D1 main. Car that just went off the dock at City Park. Okay, where you at? That's correct. Okay, start me a medic unit right now.
A Chevy Impala drove off the pier into the water with the driver inside. Captain Marty Walsh, who was already in his dive gear, jumped into the water, swam to the car, and tied a line around the rear axle. But the crew still couldn't get to the guy in the car.
Let go! Cover your eyes! Go ahead. Hey, you gotta get your seatbelt off and get out of here!
Now that was Lieutenant Alex Jackson smashing out the window with the end of an axe. And Captain Walsh got the guy out of the car. The crew pulled the man onto the boat just as his vehicle went underwater. The man was taken to the hospital and is expected to make a full recovery. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. I'm joined now by Captain Marty Walsh and Lieutenant Alex Jackson. I'm so thrilled to have both of you here. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. All right, Captain Walsh, let me start with you. Take us through this. You were back on the dock, getting ready to go back into the water for training when the car just drives in?
Absolutely, Dan. It just drove past me, and complete surprise to everybody. Noticed that we have one person in the vehicle, so I let boat crew know that, and I went in to do what I could to help get him out.
And Lieutenant Jackson, you were on the boat when this happened. Tell me from your perspective what you saw and the actions that you took there.
Yeah, so as we were taking things off the boat from our training exercise we did with the camera crew, we noticed the car go into the water. I immediately grabbed the radio and notified our dispatch to start a rescue assignment and to get me the proper resources that we needed to get the guy out safely. Like you said, Marty was already in his gear. He played a big part of it. After I smashed the window out, it becomes, you know, kind of up to him to pull the victim out of the water and get him over to us so we can safely get him onto the boat and get the EMS care that he needed.
Well, let me ask.
There was a lot of. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to ask you about the moment of trying to save the driver. And Captain Walsh, maybe I'll ask you about that first. He's now on the boat. What do you do next?
Well, I pass him up to boat crew members Ryan Thomas and Lieutenant Jackson. Rocky DiGiovanni was our boat operator. it was a little unusual since he had to actually keep the motors engaged since we had enough wind and stuff blowing the boat around to hold our position for him. Once they got him up, boat crew Caitlin Mitchell began an assessment as an EMT on the patient immediately.
And Lieutenant Jackson, tell me again about that moment that you smash the window that allowed Captain Walsh to get to the man who was inside that car. Was there any question in your mind at that moment that that was the only option?
You know, Marty did a good job tying the car off, but, you know, either way, the car is still going to sink. And, you know, we only have a short amount of time where we can go and, you know, get the man out of the car before a negative outcome, you know, would have happened. So I knew in that moment that the window needed to be busted out, and Marty did a good job pulling him out of the car after the car had partially submerged to get him.
And I want to remind people of one thing, Captain Walsh. This is an all-volunteer company, right?
Absolutely. Everybody here is here by choice. All the training they've done, all the support that we have, everything that takes place is done by volunteers because our community cares and allows us to be able to do that to help them.
Well, that should lead all of us, Captain Marty Walsh and Lieutenant Alex Jackson, to salute both of you and say thank you, not just for this amazing moment, but for what you're doing every day. You're volunteering. It's really important people remember that. Thank you both for what you did. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
And that does it for us tonight. It was a good interview I did the other day. NewsNation Prime starts right now. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.